The world woke up that morning to a strange, uneasy feeling, though no one could put their finger on exactly why. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't an earthquake, and yet something in the air made people pause and look up at the sky. It was as if the world itself had taken a deep, nervous breath. In government buildings around the globe, advisors and leaders were already gathered in emergency meetings, their faces tight with worry. Something was coming, and whatever it was, they didn't fully understand it. It began with a simple message, a signal that appeared on every satellite channel and every communications network, cutting across borders and languages with startling clarity. No one could trace its origin, but the content was impossible to ignore. Earth must bow. Resistance is unacceptable. That was all it said. There was no introduction, no explanation, just a command that felt like it carried the weight of the universe behind it. The people who saw it first were engineers, scientists, and military personnel. They stared at their screens in disbelief, thinking at first it was some kind of hoax or a test. But soon it became clear that this was no ordinary warning. It had a precision, a cold authority that humans had never encountered before. Within hours, every major government received the same message through secure channels, accompanied by images that made even the most seasoned analysts freeze in their seats. Shadows in the sky, enormous and silent, appeared to hover just outside Earth's atmosphere. They didn't move like airplanes or satellites. They didn't shine like stars. They were solid, dark, and impossible to ignore. Some described them as towers of black glass or metallic mountains floating in space. The images alone caused fear to ripple through command centers across the globe. As the world tried to process the threat, ordinary people began noticing the first signs themselves. The sky seemed different somehow. Nights were darker, and even in daylight there was a faint shimmer, almost like heat rising off a city street on a hot day. Birds hesitated in mid-flight, and animals acted strangely, sensing something humans could not see. People took photos with their phones, and soon social media was flooded with blurry images of objects hovering above the atmosphere. Governments initially dismissed these as drones or weather phenomena. But as the videos multiplied and gained clarity, even the skeptics had to admit something extraordinary was happening. In the midst of this chaos, world leaders faced a dilemma unlike any they had ever encountered. Should they respond? Should they try to communicate? Or should they prepare for a fight they had no chance of winning? Secret meetings were held behind closed doors, with military generals presenting their assessments. Some were pessimistic, saying Earth's defenses were laughably weak against the kind of power implied by these messages. Others warned that any hasty move could provoke an attack. There was no precedent for this. Never before had humanity faced a threat so large, so organized, and so utterly alien. Meanwhile, ordinary citizens went about their days with an uneasy sense of anticipation. In cities and towns, conversations at coffee shops and bus stops turned toward the strange objects in the sky. Some laughed nervously, telling themselves it was a trick of the light or a marketing stunt. Others whispered in fear, convinced that these visitors were not friendly, and that humanity was about to face a challenge unlike anything in history. Children looked up at the sky with wonder, unaware of the danger, but sensing the tension in the adults around them. Scientists and astronomers worked tirelessly, scanning every signal and every movement. They calculated trajectories, analyzed electromagnetic signatures, and tried to find weaknesses or explanations. But the more they studied, the less they understood. These objects didn't behave according to any known laws of physics. They moved with precision, yet without the propulsion systems humans could detect. They emitted no heat, no sound, no radiation that could be measured. It was as if they were alive, but in a way no human mind could fully grasp. As days passed, the tension grew. Governments issued vague statements to calm their populations, telling them to remain calm. that everything is under control. But the tone was hollow, and people sensed the fear behind the carefully crafted words. Economies wavered as stock markets reacted to uncertainty. Flights were delayed, ports slowed operations, and news channels ran continuous coverage, showing analysts and experts discussing what could happen next. The world had collectively entered a state of suspense, a waiting game for a threat no one could see clearly. But everyone feared. Amid this global tension, a group of people worked quietly, preparing in ways most could not imagine. They were engineers, former pilots, and scientists who had long suspected that humanity was not alone in the universe. Some had even studied or worked with technology that could one day be used to defend the planet. They called themselves the Midnight Armada. Unlike the government scrambling to respond publicly, this group had been planning for decades, always quietly, always in the shadows. Their members were ordinary people in appearance, but extraordinary in skill. Having devoted their lives to building something no one else believed possible, the Midnight Armada had access to facilities hidden in mountains, deserts, and beneath the oceans. They had ships unlike any in public knowledge, small enough to move quickly, but equipped with technology that could rival what hovered above Earth. Their purpose had always been simple. If humanity ever faced a threat too large for conventional defenses, they would act. They had been watching, waiting, and preparing, knowing that one day their moment might come. And now, with the arrival of the alien command, that moment had arrived. Inside the Armada's hidden control rooms, tension was palpable. Leaders of the group studied the transmissions, analyzing every detail for clues. They argued about strategy, about how to respond, and about whether the world outside was ready to handle the truth. Some members felt the world was too fragile, too dependent on governments that could not act decisively. Others argued that humanity deserved a chance to fight, that ordinary people needed to know there was hope beyond fear. In the end, they agreed on one thing: the world must be prepared. But preparation alone would not be enough. As night fell on the first full day after the command was issued, people around the globe noticed the sky beginning to change again. The hovering objects seemed to shift slightly, as if reacting to some invisible signal. Lights flickered across the horizon in patterns too deliberate to be random. In some places, faint vibrations could be felt in the ground. It was subtle, but the sense of unease was growing stronger. Conversations turned into speculation, and speculation into fear. And yet, amid all the chaos, a quiet hope began to form, born from the knowledge that somewhere, hidden from view, a group of people was ready to take action on behalf of humanity. By the end of that day, the world had reached a fragile consensus. Humanity could no longer ignore the presence above it. The command to bow had been received, but the decision about what to do next was still uncertain. Would Earth submit, or would it find the courage to resist? People could feel the weight of history pressing down on them. For the first time, the idea that humanity was not the most powerful force on its own planet or in its own sky was undeniable. And somewhere in the shadows, in secret bases hidden from every camera and satellite, the Midnight Armada prepared. They checked their systems, ran simulations, and reviewed every plan they had ever imagined. They knew the coming days would test every skill, every decision, and every ounce of courage they possessed. What the world outside did not yet know was that these ordinary people, working quietly in secret, might be humanity's only chance. The night grew deeper, and the sky darkened. The hovering objects remained, silent and unyielding, a reminder that the universe was far larger and more complex than anyone had ever imagined. For those who looked up in fear, the world felt small, fragile, and helpless. But for those who prepared in the shadows, the night was full of promise, full of determination, and full of the first whispers of what might become the greatest story humanity had ever lived through. The world had entered a strange new rhythm, one that no one had asked for, but everyone had to follow. The strange objects above the earth had not moved for days, but their mere presence had changed everything. People no longer looked at the sky the same way, they watched it. Children stopped running freely in the streets at night. Adults paused their evening routines to glance upward, and even animals seemed to sense the tension, moving cautiously or hiding. Every day, new videos circulated online, showing the objects in different parts of the world. They were massive, black, and silent, floating with an eerie stillness that made the air feel heavier. While fear spread among the public, another emotion quietly began to take root: defiance. Ordinary people started talking differently. Conversations at homes, in cafes, and at workplaces shifted from panic to something more daring. Are we really going to just bow? Someone would ask. Do we have to let them control us? It was a simple question, but it carried a weight that governments had not expected. People everywhere began questioning not only the aliens' authority, but also their own leaders' ability to respond. Governments, meanwhile, were scrambling. Emergency councils met in secret, debating every possible option. Some leaders believed negotiation might work, even though the message they had received was clear: Earth must submit, and resistance would not be tolerated. Military experts presented strategies, but many admitted that conventional weapons were useless. Missiles could not penetrate the alien shields. Aircraft could not approach without being disabled. And even advanced satellite systems provided almost no intelligence. For the first time in history, humanity was facing a power that could not be measured by familiar standards. In the midst of the confusion, the world also saw the rise of private voices claiming knowledge of the threat. Social media and news networks were filled with speculation. Videos circulated of individuals claiming to have seen secret experiments and advanced technology hidden in mountains or under the oceans. Some of these claims were exaggerated or false, but a few hinted at something real, something far beyond public understanding. Among these whispers of hope and preparation, a name began to emerge quietly. A group known only to a select few, the Midnight Armada. The Midnight Armada had existed in the shadows for years, unknown to the world. Their members were scientists, engineers, former pilots, and even some who had worked with alien technology in secret. They had been preparing for a threat like this for decades. While the rest of humanity argued and debated, the Armada had quietly built ships, tested weapons, and trained crews. They were ready. Not just ready to fight, but ready to show the world that resistance was possible. Yet even with their preparations, the members of the Midnight Armada knew the challenge ahead would be immense. They studied every image of the alien objects, analyzed every transmission, and ran simulations over and over. They understood one thing clearly: this was not a normal conflict. These beings operated on an intelligence and scale that humans could barely comprehend. Any mistake could mean the end of entire cities, entire nations, even the entire planet. The pressure was enormous, but their determination was stronger. As the days passed, the tension between fear and defiance grew more apparent among ordinary people. Communities began coming together, sharing resources, and preparing for potential disruptions. People stocked food, made emergency plans, and tried to support each other emotionally. Schools and workplaces adjusted schedules to account for blackouts or other unexpected events. The world had become a place of careful vigilance, with every human being aware that the rules had changed. At the same time, strange incidents started happening that no one could explain. In some areas, power grids fluctuated, only to stabilize without human intervention. Communication lines occasionally failed and then came back mysteriously. Some civilians reported seeing flashes of light in the sky that did not match any natural or man-made phenomenon. These events created rumors that the aliens were testing humanity, or perhaps probing for weaknesses. The fear in the public was real, but so was a sense of awe. People could not deny that something extraordinary was happening above them. Inside the secret facilities of the Midnight Armada, the focus was relentless. Teams worked around the clock, rotating shifts to monitor signals and run diagnostics. They tested prototype ships and experimental systems, making adjustments minute by minute. Each member understood the stakes. Failure was not an option. But they also shared a quiet camaraderie, a sense of purpose that went beyond fear. They were fighting not just for survival, but for the right of humanity to remain free and proud. This unity, this human determination, became as much a weapon as the technology they had built. Public reaction to the situation was mixed. Some governments attempted to maintain control by limiting the flow of information, fearing panic. But in the age of the Internet, secrecy was nearly impossible. People shared sightings, speculations, and theories online. Some communities formed local networks to observe the sky and report any changes. Ordinary citizens became observers, almost like participants in a slow, global experiment. It was a strange feeling, both frightening and empowering. For the first time, humanity realized that it could not rely solely on governments or armies. Every individual mattered. Every action could count. As the world waited, the Midnight Armada began to consider the first active measures they might take. They could not attack openly. The alien objects were too powerful, too far above Earth's conventional reach. But they could observe, gather intelligence, and find patterns. They could test responses with small, precise movements, learning how the alien technology reacted. The goal was not just to survive, but to understand. Knowledge, they believed, would be humanity's greatest weapon. The sense of anticipation grew each night. People reported strange colors in the sky, lights that shifted, and shadows that seemed alive. Rumors of alien probes spreading silently across the planet circulated widely. Children were told stories at bedtime, not of fairies or heroes, but of survival and courage in the face of unimaginable odds. Adults debated how to protect their families, how to keep hope alive, and how to act without causing panic. Humanity had entered a period of collective tension, one that connected every individual in ways that history had never demanded before. Despite the fear, acts of kindness and courage began to emerge. Strangers helped each other carry supplies. Communities organized watch groups to observe the skies, and volunteers offered support to those who were anxious or overwhelmed. In some ways, the threat had brought out the best in people. Ordinary humans, who previously felt powerless in the face of a vast universe, began to discover a hidden strength. They were scared, yes, but they were also awake, aware, and ready to act when needed. Through it all, the Midnight Armada quietly grew stronger. New members joined from unexpected places: pilots who had retired, engineers who had given up hope of being useful, scientists who had been working on unrelated projects. Each brought unique skills, and each understood the importance of their role. There was no time for egos or disagreements. Every decision, every calculation, could mean the difference between survival and catastrophe. And while the public did not yet know who these people were, the Armada worked with the knowledge that their efforts might save millions, or even billions, of lives. As the days turned into weeks, the tension between fear and defiance became the dominant emotion on Earth. Ordinary citizens looked to the sky and asked themselves, will we survive this? Will someone, somewhere, stand up for us? And somewhere, in hidden bases, the answer was quietly being prepared. The Midnight Armada was ready, watching, calculating, and waiting for the exact moment when they could reveal their presence and take action. In cities, towns, and villages, people adjusted to this new reality. Life had not stopped, but it had changed. People worked harder, cared more, and noticed details that previously went unseen. The presence of something so immense and unknowable above them had forced humans to reevaluate what mattered. Courage, preparation, and unity became the new currency of survival. And though the aliens' command was clear Earth must bow, there was now a quiet, growing sense that humanity might not bow after all. Even as fear persisted, hope persisted too. The Midnight Armada, though unseen by the world, represented a promise that Earth could resist, that ordinary people could rise to extraordinary challenges, and that the human spirit might yet prove stronger than any force from the stars. Every night, as the alien objects hovered silently above, millions of people went to bed with a mixture of fear and anticipation, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The world had changed forever, but it was still human. And as long as that remained true, there was a chance. The world had been living under the shadow of fear for weeks now. The alien objects above the atmosphere had not moved, yet their presence had changed everything. People spoke in hushed tones, watched the skies constantly, and tried to imagine the intentions of a force that seemed beyond understanding. Governments had been scrambling to respond, but they were powerless against technology and beings far beyond human capability. Military plans were drawn and redrawn, but no strategy seemed effective. Ordinary humans began to feel small, insignificant, and trapped in a reality they had never been prepared for. Amid this fear, there was a quiet stir of hope, coming from places the world had never heard of. Hidden deep beneath mountains, oceans, and remote areas of the globe, a network of secret facilities hummed with activity. The Midnight Armada, a group humanity did not know existed, had finally revealed themselves to the world's leaders. They did not issue demands or threats. Instead, they sent a single clear message. We are here to protect humanity. Stand with us or step aside. The announcement was simple, but it carried immense weight. The Midnight Armada was unlike anything Earth had ever known. Their members were not generals or politicians. They were ordinary humans who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Scientists who had spent decades studying energy systems, pilots who had mastered advanced maneuvers, engineers who could build technologies thought impossible. All of them were united by one goal: to defend humanity. Some members had even interacted with extraterrestrial technology in the past, secretly learning patterns and systems that would now be crucial. Their existence was a quiet, powerful reminder that humans could rise above fear when the stakes were greatest. While the world outside debated whether to believe the Armada's claims, the group itself worked tirelessly. They analyzed every transmission from the aliens, every movement of the hovering objects, and every anomaly in the sky. They created simulations, tested strategies, and prepared for countless scenarios. Each member understood that failure was not an option. And yet, despite the pressure, there was a sense of determination that could not be broken. For the first time, humanity had defenders who were not constrained by bureaucracy or fear. They acted with purpose and precision. The Midnight Armada's fleet was remarkable. Their ships were unlike anything publicly known. Sleek, agile, and equipped with advanced shields and energy systems. These vessels could move through the atmosphere and space with a speed and accuracy that amazed even their creators. They were not just weapons. They were symbols of human ingenuity, proof that even ordinary people could rise to extraordinary challenges. Each ship was piloted by individuals trained to respond instinctively, to think quickly, and to act decisively. Every movement, every calculation, had been planned to protect the planet. Outside, people noticed subtle changes in the skies. Strange flashes of light, patterns of movement that did not match natural phenomena, and occasional disruptions in communication led to speculation about who or what was acting. Rumors spread about secret fleets, hidden bases, and advanced technology. While some dismissed these as conspiracy theories, others believed there was truth behind the stories. It was in this environment of uncertainty that the Midnight Armada quietly prepared to reveal. themselves in a way the world could not ignore. Communication with the governments was delicate. Many leaders were cautious, afraid that revealing the Armada's existence could cause panic or unrest. Yet the group insisted that humanity needed to know that resistance was possible. They sent proof of their capabilities, small but undeniable demonstrations of technology that could move, hide, and strike in ways humans had never imagined. The message was clear. Earth did not have to bow, and there were humans ready to lead the fight. The morale within the Midnight Armada was high, but the stakes were immense. Every member knew that the aliens' forces were unlike anything humanity had faced. They had studied countless worlds, defeated civilizations, and moved with an efficiency that left entire species trembling. Yet, the Armada's members were not afraid in the way the public was. Their fear was tempered by preparation, knowledge, and unity. They understood that courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. As the days passed, more members joined the Armada. Retired pilots, engineers, scientists, and even civilians with unique skills volunteered, understanding that survival required everyone's talents. Each new member underwent rigorous training, learning the capabilities of the fleet, the behavior of the alien technology, and strategies to exploit weaknesses. The group became a microcosm of humanity itself, a combination of skills, experiences, and determination that, together, could accomplish what individuals alone could not. The public, meanwhile, continued to live under the alien presence. Cities experienced blackouts and strange interference. Communications sometimes faltered, and people felt a tension in the air that could not be ignored. Yet, amidst this fear, stories of courage began to emerge. Neighbors helped each other, communities organized to observe and prepare, and ordinary humans found strength in small acts of bravery. Children learned resilience, adults discovered leadership, and humanity, as a collective, began to awaken. The Midnight Armada monitored these developments carefully. They understood that fear alone could paralyze a society, but hope could inspire action. By observing human behavior, they learned how to coordinate their interventions most effectively. Their strategy was not only to counter the alien threat, but also to bolster the spirit of humanity. Every simulation, every test, was designed with the awareness that human courage, ingenuity, and determination were as important as technology in the battle to come. One of the most critical aspects of the Armada's preparation was understanding the aliens' communication. While the messages were initially simple and commanding, the Armada's analysts noticed patterns, frequencies, and signals that hinted at weaknesses. They realized that the aliens' technology, while advanced, had predictable elements, rhythms, and cycles that could be observed and exploited. This discovery changed everything. Humanity might have been outmatched in raw power, but with strategy and insight, they had a chance. The Armada's leaders knew they could not act hastily. Any premature move could provoke the aliens and trigger an attack that humanity could not survive. Patience became a weapon. The team studied patterns in the alien presence, tested small maneuvers, and simulated battles in virtual environments. Every member, from the youngest technician to the most experienced pilot, understood the importance of timing and precision. They were preparing not just to defend, but to strike decisively when the moment was right. As they trained and strategized, the Midnight Armada also considered the human factor. They understood that ordinary people would be frightened and confused. To that end, they began planning ways to communicate hope and guidance without causing panic. Small signals, encrypted messages, and carefully coordinated demonstrations of capability were intended to reassure humanity that resistance was possible. They wanted people to understand that while the skies above were filled with a terrifying presence, there were humans fighting on their behalf, ready to protect them from the unknown. The anticipation grew with each passing day. Every night, millions of people around the world looked up at the sky, wondering when the first signs of action would appear. The hovering objects remained silent, massive, and immovable, yet the world could sense that something was about to change. Fear was still present, but so was a subtle sense of expectation. People were beginning to realize that humanity might not be powerless after all. Somewhere, hidden from view, a group of ordinary humans had become extraordinary. Even as they prepared, the Midnight Armada faced doubts and challenges. Equipment sometimes failed, strategies had to be adjusted, and human fatigue was a constant concern. But through it all, the team persevered. They supported each other, solved problems quickly, and reminded one another of the stakes. Every decision mattered, every action counted, and the shared purpose created a bond stronger than fear itself. And then, quietly, the first signs of movement began. Small, deliberate shifts in the hidden fleet, brief tests of engines, and calculated maneuvers that remained invisible to the public were the first indicators that the Midnight Armada was ready to act. They were no longer just observers, they were participants. They had become the shield and spear of humanity, poised to challenge a force that had long seemed unstoppable. The stage was set. The world watched the skies with a mixture of fear and wonder. The Midnight Armada prepared in silence, knowing that when the time came, every moment of preparation would matter. Humanity was no longer a passive observer of the universe. For the first time, it had defenders who could act, who could strike, and who could inspire hope across the globe. In that quiet moment, as the alien objects remained still above, the Midnight Armada understood the truth. This was not just a battle of technology, but a test of humanity itself. Courage, unity, and determination would be just as important as ships, shields, and weapons. And while the aliens had issued their command to bow, the humans hidden in the shadows were preparing to show that Earth would not kneel without a fight. For weeks, the world had been holding its breath, waiting, watching the skies with fear and anticipation. The massive alien objects hovered silently above, unchanging yet threatening, like the calm before a storm. Humanity's leaders were paralyzed. Military forces were ineffective against technology they could barely comprehend, and ordinary people were caught between fear and awe. Every day brought new reports of strange light patterns in the sky, unusual electronic disturbances, and the faint but unsettling sense that the world was being observed more closely than ever before. Then, without warning, the first strike came. The massive alien objects moved with sudden precision, a reminder that this was not a random threat. They were organized, purposeful, and ruthless. Across the globe, satellites detected enormous beams of light stretching from the largest object to cities and power centers below. In some regions, entire electrical grids went dark. Traffic lights froze, communications failed, and panic spread in minutes. People in homes, offices, and streets experienced the terrifying reality that their most advanced technology could not stop what was coming. In major cities, chaos erupted. People ran for shelter, car alarms rang endlessly, and emergency services struggled to respond. Hospitals, already under strain, were forced to rely on backup generators that sometimes failed, leaving patients in darkness. Governments scrambled, sending orders to military units, but conventional weapons had no effect. Missiles disappeared before impact, jets were disabled by strange energy fields, and even the most advanced radar and detection systems failed to provide useful information. Humanity realized for the first time that the universe was far larger, far more complex, and far more dangerous than anything they had ever imagined. Amid this chaos, the Midnight Armada remained calm and focused. They had anticipated such an attack and had prepared for it carefully. In hidden bases across the globe, teams activated their ships, ran final checks on energy shields, and coordinated with one another using secure communications. Unlike ordinary forces, The Armada had trained for moments like this for decades. They had studied alien technology, practiced maneuvers under extreme conditions, and designed ships capable of moving unseen through the atmosphere. Their confidence was not arrogance. It was the result of relentless preparation. The first human response was cautious. Small reconnaissance missions were sent to observe the alien technology, and the results were both terrifying and informative. The alien energy beams were precise and devastating, yet they also revealed patterns. The Armada's analysts quickly identified weak points, gaps in the shielding, predictable sequences, and timing that could be exploited. While the aliens' attack caused destruction, it also provided humanity with knowledge that would be crucial in the battle ahead. The destruction, though frightening, became a lesson. Meanwhile, ordinary people continued to endure the chaos. Cities that were temporarily cut off from power struggled to maintain order. Families huddled together in apartments. Office workers evacuated tall buildings, and communities helped one another navigate the sudden darkness. Fear was everywhere, but so was a sense of solidarity. Humans began to act in ways they had not before, sharing resources, offering comfort, and protecting the vulnerable. The alien attack had caused devastation, but it had also sparked courage, creativity, and resilience among ordinary people. In the skies above, the alien objects maintained their position, adjusting as needed to disable critical infrastructure. It was a calculated demonstration of power, designed to show humanity that resistance was futile. But the Midnight Armada had anticipated this psychological tactic. They used the chaos as a cover, moving their fleet from hidden locations into positions where they could observe and respond without being detected. Every ship, every crew, and every system was synchronized. They had one goal: to strike with precision and defend humanity. When the time was right, the first encounter between human and alien technology occurred quietly at first. Small reconnaissance ships from the Armada approached the edge of the alien influence, testing shields and defenses. They recorded patterns, reacted to energy bursts, and collected vital data that would inform larger strategies. The pilots, engineers, and analysts worked tirelessly, knowing that every second counted. Unlike the aliens, humanity's response relied on ingenuity and adaptability. Where the aliens were predictable in their strength, humans were unpredictable in their tactics. Even as the Armada prepared, the aliens escalated their assault. Cities experienced more blackouts, communications were further disrupted, and reports of strange electromagnetic pulses increased. In some regions, transportation systems froze, forcing millions to navigate on foot. People faced shortages of water, food, and medical care. Fear continued to grow, but so did human resilience. Citizens began organizing evacuation efforts, community patrols, and emergency shelters. Humanity, though under siege, refused to give in to despair. The Midnight Armada knew the stakes were immense. One mistake could result in widespread destruction, even the loss of entire cities. Yet they also knew that hesitation could be deadly. Every action had to be calculated, every movement deliberate. Engineers monitored the ship's energy systems, pilots ran simulations, and analysts interpreted data from the alien objects. The Armada operated like a living organism, each part supporting the others, prepared to act instantly when an opportunity presented itself. At the same time, the psychological impact on humanity was profound. The alien strike demonstrated their immense power, but it also showed that they were not invincible. Citizens began to notice patterns in the attacks, and whispers of hope started to spread. People began to realize that humanity was not entirely powerless, that there were those who had trained, planned, and prepared for this moment. Ordinary individuals, inspired by the presence of the Midnight Armada, started to act with more courage and resourcefulness. Whether in small acts of kindness, protecting neighbors, or simply persevering through the chaos, the Midnight Armada's strategy was careful and deliberate. They were not rushing into battle. They were observing, learning, and preparing for the moment when they could strike effectively. They studied the alien technology, mapped its patterns, and calculated the precise timing needed to exploit weaknesses. Every detail mattered, from the timing of energy pulses to the angle of approach for reconnaissance ships. This attention to detail, combined with human ingenuity, gave them an advantage that brute force alone could not achieve. As the days passed, the alien attacks intensified. Beams struck cities with precision, communication networks were further disrupted, and transportation systems were paralyzed. Humanity faced widespread fear and uncertainty, yet communities continued to adapt. People learned to navigate without technology, to support one another in darkness, and to remain vigilant. The chaos had forced humanity to become resourceful, creative, and resilient. Even under the threat of immense alien power, the human spirit endured. For the Midnight Armada, the moment of decision was approaching. Their reconnaissance missions had provided enough data to identify vulnerabilities in the alien forces. Their ships were in position, their crews were trained, and their strategy was ready. The first strike from the aliens had revealed patterns that could be exploited, and humanity now had a chance to respond in a way that could shift the balance. Every member of the Armada understood the gravity of the situation. The first engagement would set the tone for the conflict that would follow. In hidden control rooms, analysts reviewed every detail, confirming that timing and coordination were perfect. Engineers ran final diagnostics on shields, energy systems, and propulsion units. Pilots prepared mentally, understanding that their actions could determine the survival of millions. The Midnight Armada was ready to act, not with brute force, but with precision, intelligence, and courage. They were the first line of defense for humanity, and for the first time, they would confront the alien threat directly. As the sun set, the world below remained unaware of the full scale of preparation. People continued their routines under the shadow of fear, adjusting to intermittent power and disrupted communications. Families gathered together, communities supported one another, and ordinary humans continued to act with courage in the face of uncertainty. The alien objects above remained silent, massive, and threatening, yet the seeds of resistance had been planted. Humanity was no longer entirely passive. Hidden defenders were preparing to turn the tide. The first confrontation, though still in preparation, had already changed the dynamic. The aliens had shown their power, but the Midnight Armada had demonstrated that they could observe, learn, and act strategically. Humanity had learned that even against a force that seemed unstoppable, intelligence, preparation, and courage could create an opening. The world was about to witness the beginning of a struggle that would test every aspect of human ingenuity and resilience. In the quiet moments before action, the Midnight Armada understood the stakes. This was not just a battle of technology, it was a test of humanity itself. Courage, unity, and determination were as important as energy shields, weapons, and ships. The aliens had commanded Earth to bow, but the humans in the shadows were ready to show that submission was not an option. The first sparks of resistance were about. The world had been living in a tense, quiet anticipation for weeks. The alien objects hovered silently above, casting a shadow that seemed to touch every corner of the planet. People had adjusted their lives around fear, walking carefully, watching the skies constantly, and trying to prepare for the worst. Cities had learned to endure blackouts, communities had organized mutual aid, and families had found ways to stay calm in the chaos. But despite the fear, a quiet sense of hope had begun to spread. Somewhere hidden from view, a group of humans was preparing to act, and that hope rested on their shoulders. The Midnight Armada had spent weeks preparing. Every pilot, engineer, and analyst had trained tirelessly for this moment. Ships had been tested, energy systems calibrated, and weapons readied for precision strikes. Every member understood the stakes. This was not a simple battle. The aliens had shown their immense power, but humanity had learned from every action they took. Patterns had been studied, weaknesses identified, and strategies developed that could exploit even the smallest openings. The world might not know it yet, but the fight to defend Earth was about to begin. As night fell over the Pacific, the first move was made. The Midnight Armada ships, previously hidden in ocean trenches and mountain bases, began to rise. Sleek and silent, they moved as if they were part of the night itself, leaving no trace for the aliens to detect immediately. Pilots held their breaths as they climbed into position, knowing that the slightest mistake could be disastrous. The engines hummed softly, a sound unnoticed by anyone on the surface. Yet filled with the energy of determination and hope, the sky above Earth had always been a familiar place, a backdrop to daily life, but that night it was transformed into a battlefield. The hovering alien objects shifted slightly, sensing movement below. Energy flares lit the horizon, and sudden flashes in the clouds hinted at the power that lurked above. Ordinary people looked up, noticing unusual lights and movement, but could not yet comprehend what was happening. They felt the tension, the anticipation, and a strange mixture of fear and excitement. Something was about to change. Then it happened. The Midnight Armada made the first strike. Ships moved with precise coordination, darting through the shadows and launching energy pulses designed to test the aliens' defenses. For the first time, humans were not just reacting, they were acting. Beams of light from the Armada's ships arced gracefully through the sky, meeting alien energy fields and sparks that lit the night. The confrontation was not just physical, it was symbolic. Humanity, for the first time, was showing that it would not bow without a fight. The aliens responded immediately. Massive beams shot from the hovering objects, targeting the Armada's ships with devastating precision. The sky became alive with flashes of energy, a terrifying display of power. Yet, the Armada's pilots, engineers, and analysts were prepared. Shields absorbed the energy bursts, evasive maneuvers countered attacks, and precision strikes found gaps in the alien defenses. The first real battle between human and alien technology had begun, and the sky above the Pacific was set ablaze with lights, colors, and fire. People across the globe watched in awe and fear as the horizon lit up. Some thought the world was ending. Others felt hope for the first time in weeks. The lights in the sky were not just a battle, they were a message. Humanity was alive, strong, and willing to fight. The Midnight Armada had turned what seemed like a hopeless situation into a display of courage and determination. Ordinary citizens saw, even from afar, that resistance was possible. The spectacle of the battle, terrifying as it was, reminded humans that they could endure and fight back. The fight was intense. The aliens' weapons were powerful, capable of destroying entire cities. Yet the Midnight Armada's precision and preparation allowed them to evade and counterattack. Ships moved in coordinated patterns, using every maneuver, every energy pulse, and every strategy they had practiced. Engineers adjusted systems in real time, repairing minor damage and redirecting power to shields and weapons. Analysts communicated constantly, guiding pilots through complex calculations and strategies. It was a battle of skill, intelligence, and courage, rather than sheer force. Amid the chaos, the human element shone brightest. Pilots who had spent years in training demonstrated incredible bravery, risking their lives to position ships for maximum effect. Engineers worked tirelessly in hidden compartments, monitoring systems that could fail at any moment. Analysts, aware of the stakes, provided guidance with calm precision. Every member of the Midnight Armada understood that humanity's survival depended not just on technology, but on teamwork, courage, and resolve. The sky above was transformed into a canvas of energy. Beams collided, Shields flared, and explosions lit the clouds in bursts of color. Sparks rained across the horizon, and the reflection on the oceans made it appear as if fire had fallen from the heavens. For people watching from below, the sight was terrifying, beautiful, and incomprehensible. It was a night unlike any other in human history. Fear and hope existed side by side, intertwined with the realization that the world was witnessing something extraordinary. As the battle continued, the aliens realized they were facing something unexpected. Humanity had adapted, learned patterns, and exploited weaknesses. The Midnight Armada's tactics were not predictable, and the aliens' usual strategies were failing. For the first time in recorded history, a species under threat was showing resilience, intelligence, and courage that matched the enemy's power. The aliens hesitated, recalculated, and adjusted their approach. But the humans' preparation made every attack harder and less effective. Ordinary people on the ground could only see fragments of the battle. But the psychological effect was profound. Fear remained, but so did a growing sense of pride and hope. Citizens realized that humanity was not powerless. The sight of coordinated, precise human action against a vastly superior force inspired courage and solidarity. Communities rallied together, helping those in need, supporting each other through power outages, and taking comfort in the knowledge that defenders were fighting above them. The battle stretched on for hours. Every second tested the limits of both humans and aliens. Ships from the Midnight Armada executed daring maneuvers, striking targets with precision and retreating before counterattacks could hit. The sky was alive with motion, energy, and strategy. Analysts and engineers coordinated every move, pilots adapted instantly, and every member of the team worked as one. It was a display of human ingenuity, courage, and determination that would be remembered for generations. By the end of the engagement, the tide had shifted slightly. The aliens, though still powerful, had been forced to retreat in areas where the Midnight Armada had struck effectively. Their massive ships hovered at a distance, recalculating and reassessing their strategy. Humanity had shown that resistance was not only possible, but effective. The Armada's success was a turning point, a demonstration that courage, preparation, and human ingenuity could counter even overwhelming power. For the people on Earth, the victory was both inspiring and sobering. The aliens had demonstrated their capacity for destruction, yet humans had shown their ability to fight back. Citizens realized that the world was no longer a passive place, and that ordinary people, working with extraordinary skill and courage, could make a difference. The first major engagement of the Midnight Armada had lit the sky on fire, both literally and metaphorically, and it had changed the perception of what humanity was capable of achieving. The Midnight Armada regrouped after the battle, analyzing every detail and preparing for the next engagement. Every success and every failure provided lessons that would guide future actions. The aliens had been strong, precise, and deadly, but humans had learned, adapted, and struck back with skill and courage. The night had been terrifying, beautiful, and unforgettable. It had shown that even against the greatest odds, humanity could rise, fight, and endure. As dawn broke over the horizon, the world below was filled with a mixture of relief, awe, and hope. The sky had been set on fire, but humanity had not fallen. Citizens began to speak quietly of courage, determination, and the extraordinary actions of hidden defenders. The Midnight Armada, though still largely unknown to the public, had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that humans could face even the most terrifying forces with intelligence, skill, and heart. And somewhere in the hidden bases, the members of the Armada prepared for what was to come. They knew the aliens would return, stronger and more calculated than before. But they also knew that humanity had learned something critical. Courage, preparation, and teamwork could turn fear into hope and hope into action. The night the sky was set on fire had not just been a battle, it had been a declaration. Earth would not bow without a fight. Humanity was ready to defend itself, and the world would never be the same again. The first light of dawn broke over the horizon, washing the world in a pale, trembling glow. The sky, once lit with the chaos of beams, fire, and sparks, was now quiet. Clouds hung heavy, tinted with faint remnants of energy from the previous night's battle. People around the globe emerged from homes, shelters, and underground structures with a mixture of fear, relief, and awe. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Though the alien objects still hovered above, their first engagement with humanity had ended for now. The Midnight Armada had returned to their hidden bases, exhausted but triumphant. Ships that had danced across the sky in deadly precision were carefully inspected, repaired, and prepared for the next engagement. Every pilot, engineer, and analyst understood the weight of what had just happened. Humanity had faced a force far superior in power and technology, and yet, through courage, skill, and coordination, they had survived and struck back. It was a turning point, the moment when humans proved to themselves and the universe that they would not submit without a fight. News of the battle began to filter to the public, cautiously and in pieces. Governments, initially fearful of mass panic, released controlled reports and videos showing the Armada's success in small, strategic demonstrations. Ordinary people reacted with disbelief, amazement, and hope. For the first time in weeks, they felt that fear was no longer the only force governing their lives. The image of humans moving with skill and courage against an alien power spread across social media, creating a wave of pride and unity. Humanity had not only endured, it had resisted. Communities began to celebrate in quiet ways. In cities where lights flickered back on and power returned, people shared stories of how they had survived the chaos. Neighbors helped each other clean up debris, repair damage, and support the vulnerable. Strangers offered food, water, and reassurance. The events of the night had left scars, but they had also sparked a sense of togetherness. Humans realized that courage was not just about pilots and engineers. Fighting above it was about ordinary people standing together, helping each other survive, and refusing to give in to fear in the hidden bases. The Midnight Armada continued their work. Analysts studied data from the first engagement, identifying patterns in the alien technology and preparing strategies for future encounters. Engineers tested and upgraded systems, ensuring that every ship, weapon, and shield was ready for the next battle. Pilots trained tirelessly, running simulations over and over, learning how to anticipate alien maneuvers and exploit weaknesses. Every person in the Armada understood that this was only the beginning. The aliens would return, stronger and more calculated, but humanity was now ready to meet them head-on. The aliens, too, were responding. The objects above remained in position, massive and unyielding, but there were signs of adjustment. Fluctuations in energy fields, minor shifts in orientation, and sudden flashes in the clouds suggested that they were analyzing humanity's resistance. The Midnight Armada had made their presence known, and now the aliens were recalibrating. The stage was set for the next phase of the conflict, but for the first time, humans had hope. They had seen that the aliens could be challenged, that their overwhelming power was not absolute, and that careful preparation and courage could turn the tide. The first battle also had a profound psychological effect on humanity. Fear, which had been the dominant emotion for weeks, began to coexist with hope. Citizens started to act with renewed purpose, finding ways to support each other and prepare for potential disruptions. Schools reopened in some areas, community centers provided aid, and volunteers organized watch groups to monitor the skies. People began to believe that their actions mattered, that every small effort contributed to the larger fight. The world had shifted from helplessness to active resilience. Even more importantly, Humanity began to understand the value of unity. The battle had shown that no single person, government, or military could face the alien threat alone. Courage and skill were important, but collaboration, coordination, and shared knowledge were essential. Communities started to communicate more. Governments coordinated with emergency services, and citizens organized themselves to be ready for anything. The sense of shared responsibility, born out of fear and strengthened by hope, became one of humanity's most powerful weapons. The Midnight Armada, aware of this shift, began planning ways to empower humanity further. They understood that the alien object's next move would likely be calculated and destructive, and that ordinary people needed to be ready. They developed systems for early warning, methods to guide citizens during emergencies, and strategies to help communities remain resilient. Humanity's survival depended not just on the hidden fleet above, but on the millions of people below, working together, remaining vigilant, and refusing to give in to despair. As the day progressed, the sky began to clear, and the world had a moment to breathe. The previous night's chaos left visible marks: broken infrastructure, damaged vehicles, and exhausted citizens, but it also left a new energy. People spoke differently, laughed a little more freely, and shared stories of how they had survived. Parents comforted children who had been frightened, neighbors helped each other recover, and communities began rebuilding. Humanity had faced terror, witnessed fire in the skies, and emerged stronger, more resilient, and more united. The Midnight Armada used this moment to prepare their next steps. Analysts reviewed every detail, from energy patterns to movement sequences, searching for insights that could give humanity an advantage. Engineers tested new technologies designed to exploit weaknesses in the alien systems. Pilots trained relentlessly, running simulations that pushed their skills to the limit. Every preparation, every calculation, and every exercise was aimed at one goal: to defend Earth, protect humanity, and ensure that the aliens would never command the planet again. The aliens, while still threatening, were now aware that humanity was not defenseless. The first battle had demonstrated that humans could learn, adapt, and fight back with intelligence and precision. The objects above adjusted their positions, but the hesitation suggested that they were respecting the humans' newfound capability. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted slightly, not through overwhelming force, but through courage, strategy, and determination. Humanity had proven that resistance was possible. On the ground, ordinary people continued to contribute in ways that might never be seen or recorded. Citizens shared food and water, checked on neighbors, and helped repair damaged infrastructure. Communities stayed vigilant, prepared to respond to any warning or disruption. Children learned to adapt to challenges. Adults discovered hidden strengths, and the world began to realize that courage was not only about extraordinary individuals, it was about collective resilience. Humanity's spirit had been tested, and for the first time, it had not faltered. As night approached again, the sky above remained ominous but quieter. The alien objects hovered, massive and threatening, yet humanity had survived and resisted. The Midnight Armada remained vigilant, prepared for any move the aliens might make. They understood the coming days and weeks would require continued vigilance, preparation, and courage. The first battle had been a test, and humanity had passed not perfectly, but with skill, determination, and hope. The aftermath of the battle also brought a new sense of purpose. Governments, communities, and ordinary citizens realized that they were part of something larger than themselves. The fight for survival was no longer just about defense. It was about proving that humanity, as a collective force, could stand against challenges far beyond what they had ever imagined. Courage, unity, and resilience had become the guiding principles, shaping the actions and decisions of people across the globe. The Midnight Armada, though still largely unknown to the public, had become a symbol of hope. Their actions had demonstrated that ordinary humans could rise to extraordinary challenges, that preparation and strategy mattered as much as brute force, and that intelligence, courage, and teamwork could turn the tide even against overwhelming odds. The world, though scarred and shaken, had learned a crucial lesson. Humanity would not bow, and humans were capable of achieving the impossible when united in hidden bases. The Armada continued to plan for future confrontations. Analysts studied the alien technology, searching for new insights. Engineers improved systems, ensuring that every ship and weapon was ready. Pilots trained relentlessly, mastering maneuvers that could make the difference in the next engagement. Every member understood that the battle was not over, but they also knew that humanity's spirit had been strengthened. The first confrontation had changed everything. For ordinary humans, life slowly began to return to a fragile normalcy. Streets were repaired, power grids restored, and communities rebuilt what had been damaged. Yet the world was forever changed. Fear had been tempered by hope, despair had been met with courage, and humanity had proven its ability to fight back against forces once thought unstoppable. Children looked at the sky with wonder rather than fear. Adults spoke of resilience and courage, and communities took pride in their ability to endure. The final lesson of the first battle was clear. Humanity could face the unknown, survive, and resist. Courage was not about being fearless. It was about acting